Alright, FlipAClip tutorial on how to do a walk cycle. Let's make a new project. Walking. Okay, background. Mentioned at the beginning of this project, you can go to Google and find your own. You could access that through your photo library. Be creative with what you want to do. I'm just going to hit the little banner ribbon icon here and do the preset backgrounds. They have a decent one I'm going to use here, just kind of a walk down the street. That'll work for me. Canvas size is fine, 12 frames per second. Here we go. We're in. So two things we're trying to really focus on today. One is using multiple layers to our advantage and altering the opacity to help us with our tracings. Second thing we're trying to master is positioning of our character as it walks down the street. So making sure, for instance, we're not doing slidey animation or having our character kind of magically transport down the street 6 feet at a time. So we'll talk about all that as we go. Down at the bottom right is my layers menu. Right now it's a 1 with 3 rectangles. That means I have 1 layer. I'm going to add at least 1 more. So I'm going to hit the plus sign here. So we have 2 layers, both at 100% opacity right now, and they both have nothing on it. So the background is actually treated as its own layer. These are both now kind of their own separate entities on top of that. So layer 1 I'm going to leave as my layer where I'm going to be doing my sketching or my drawing, and I'm going to select layer 2 is where I'm going to place my what I'm going to refer to as my reference frames. So my reference frames, I can hit these 3 dots at the top right to add an image. My reference frames I grabbed from Google. So if you want to use this same one, you could Google 8-frame walk cycle and find it pretty easily. I also put an image similar to this near the assignment in Schoology that you could use. So this is what I'm going to refer to as your reference frames that we'll be tracing. For me, the size is actually pretty decent. I think I'm going to mostly keep the size intact, but if you need to change anything, you can just grab a corner and stretch it out. I'm not going to rotate it, looks fine. Cool. So now I'm going to go back to my layers panel down here, and on that 100%, I'm going to actually drag that down to maybe as low as like 20%. So I can still see my characters clearly, but they're a little more ghostified now, and I can see roughly where they are on the sidewalk. So obviously feet want to be where they should be. What's tempting now is to just kind of create 8 frames and copy and paste the reference frames and just kind of make them be in this position. But the problem with that is when we start getting into each frame by frame here, if we were to draw it as it is right now and play the animation, it would look really weird because our character is going to be essentially sliding forward unnaturally. The foot position will not match up every frame. It'll look like our character has essentially vanished and reappeared in a new position. So I'll explain our process here as we go. I'm going to go back to my layers panel and select layer 1. That's where I'm going to be doing my actual drawing. So with my pen tool here, I'm going to zoom in a touch and create what's called my first contact pose, which is the point in time where you are, well, in contact with the ground. And I like these reference frames because they have shaded out the left side of this character's body. So I'm going to maintain that with my sketch and just kind of shade in the left leg and the left arm for now, just so I can keep track of what's what better. I'm going to touch up a couple things here. Good enough. Okay, so we have contact pose 1 in place. Nice. So now the method that I like to do is to duplicate this entire frame, paste it forward, and then make some changes on frame 2. So that process would look like this. Tap and hold on frame 1 at the bottom. The copy icon is the one right next to the trash, just to the right of the trash. Once you copy, it generates 2 other icons. For pasting, do you want to paste to the left or paste to the right is essentially our options now. So I want to paste to the right, and that will create frame 2. That is the duplicate of frame 1. So to get cleaned up and ready for my next frame of animation, I'm going to select the lasso tool. Select so this is my drawing I've made here, because this is layer 1. And just delete that, because I'm going to be making a new drawing on frame 2. Now your view might look something like this, where you still kind of see the character from the previous scene that you drew. That's called onion mode. And in my menu here, I've now turned that on. I had it off for a moment. So yours is probably on by default. And that's kind of helpful, but sometimes it's not. And I'll explain why in a moment. But for right now, I'm going to keep it on. Now I'm going to go to layer 2. This is where my reference frames are living right now. I still have my lasso tool, and I'm going to select all my reference frames here, so this big chunk of stuff. And my goal now is my next frame is called a recoil pose, as you can see the label underneath here. Now the important thing is to match up feet now. So if I'm going to pay attention for a moment to the left foot, the shaded out foot. So if I were to just draw the next frame where it is, this left foot here has at this point transferred forward, what, like 3 feet of space? So in other words, that would look really weird if that's how the animation played out, if my foot just slid forward magically for 3 feet of space. So what we want to do is make sure that those feet match up. So I'm going to go back to my lasso tool here, make sure I'm on my reference frame again. What I need to do is slide the whole thing down so that I'm only focused right now on this left foot. I'm going to zoom in here and show you what I mean. So this foot right here is what needs to match up. And on that contact pose, the heel makes contact first. So I want that heel to be matched up right here. That's the important piece, is that this heel right here matches up with the other foot. The rest of the body is going to be in different position. The right foot is in a slightly different position. The arms are in different position. The head's in different position. It's this particular foot that I'm focused on right now. So once I'm feeling confident that that foot is matched up, I'm going to go back into my menu here and turn off onion mode, because it's kind of just visual clutter at this point. It's too much to look at. So I'm going to go to trace my recoil pose, and I don't want that onion in my way of seeing what I need to trace. I'm going to switch back to layer 1 to actually draw this guy out here. I'm going to continue to get in the habit of shading the lefts for this character here. There we go, frame 2, pretty good. So now I'm going to repeat that process for frame 3. I'll go a little faster now. So tap and hold frame 2, copy, paste forward to frame 3. Lasso my character that I drew on the previous frame, delete him out of there. Turn back on onion so I can still see what I drew on the previous frame. Switch to layer 2 where my reference frames are. Select all that. Now we're going to be creating a passing pose, it's called. So I need to slide to my 3rd frame, and again I'm focused only on the left foot. Take a close look here. So this shaded foot here is what needs to match up. So heel to heel is what I'm going to try and do here. So this is the foot that needs to match up. Everything else is kind of in different positions. The toe of my other foot is still kind of roughly in the same place. The head position is a little bit higher than the recoil pose. So this is called the passing pose now. Or actually, this foot will actually be in a passing position, so it's going to pass in front of that left foot. So it actually is not in the same position. But the left foot is in the same position. At this point, I feel good that my left foot is matched up with the left foot. I'm going to turn off onion mode so that I can only focus on this passing pose and not my previous recoil pose. From here, I'm ready to draw on layer 1. And I'm focused only on passing pose. So this is called a passing pose because the right foot is passing in front of the left at this time. And the left arm isn't even really visible. It's behind the body, passing behind the body. Okay. So my next frame is called a high point, the highest point in your walk cycle. So I'm going to repeat the process, copy, paste forward. Now I have frame 4. Highlight what I've created already, delete that, turn on onion so I can still see what I did on the previous frame. Go back to layer 2, make a selection of my reference frames. I'm going to be sliding now so that I can match up my high point frame. Looking again at just that left foot is still planted in place. That's where I want to make sure, toe to toe in this case. Toe to toe here. Once I feel like I have it, turn off onion. Go to your draw layer. This is called high point. You're pushing off of your toes. Your head is at its highest position. And we do see the left arm in this case, kind of pushing forward. Okay. And then I would repeat that process for the next 4. And then if you'll notice this, there's actually a 9th frame in this case, which just repeats the first frame, just that contact pose again with the left foot. So that would be the process for, I've done half of a walk cycle here, I guess, but hopefully by now you kind of get the gist of it. When I want to test out my animation, I can go to any of my frames and bring the opacity of layer 2 down to 0, so I don't see those reference frames at all, and hit play and take a look at what I've got here. What should be happening and what I see on mine right now is that left foot, if that's the one you're starting with, should really not move at all. It's planted. That's how, that's how walking works. Your foot doesn't magically slide forward. So you created these 4 frames, and in reality, this foot hasn't really moved from this position at all. From frame 1 to frame 4. It's still, roughly speaking, in the same place, which is, let's see, in the case of my example here, roughly at the crack in the sidewalk here. So as you can see on frame 1, the heel is right about there. Heel is still roughly at the crack. Heel still roughly at the crack. And at this point, it's kind of peeling up off the sidewalk, but essentially the foot's in the same place. So if my character is only gone from, say, right here to right here in 4 frames, that means when I complete this walk cycle, I'd probably only get to about right here on this sidewalk. And then if I wanted to actually complete the cycle all the way through, that would probably be at least another 1 or 2 full cycles. If this is a full 8-frame walk cycle, this is a full 8-frame walk cycle, this is a full 8-frame walk cycle. I would need to repeat that full walk cycle probably 3 times to get my character to actually navigate across this entire space. which sounds like a lot of work, but in reality, once you get the 8 frames in, it's just a copy and paste job at that point. You can just kind of translate that character forward, and that would be the topic maybe of my next video that I make. But for now, hopefully that gives you the basics on how to make sure that those feet stay planted. The rest of the body obviously kind of moves as it does, but making sure that the foot positioning on the turf is set in place. I've noticed that is a very common error for high schoolers getting their first experience with animation. Like I said, the temptation would be to just work out those reference frames as they stand here, right? Where in reality, those 8 frames really only get you so far. They don't get you across the whole scene. They're just spaced out for us to be able to actually see them separately. So good luck. I'll probably publish part 2 at some point here, talking about how we can copy and paste the walk cycle frames to make our lives a whole lot easier once we have the 8 created. That's a good start.